Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators and a women's body confidence expert. Today, I have the lovely Georgie with me. For those who don't know Georgie, she's an online coach and the owner of coachedbygee, who's on a mission to changing people's lives one day at a time. And aren't we all, as coaches? Do you know what I mean? Like, we come into the industry wanting to help people, but like, how genuine are people actually wanting to help people? Do you know what I'm saying?
And be helped too, I think. That's a big thing in this space is that, yeah, it's all well and good to have a coach, but you need to be just as open to being coached, just as much as the coach wants to help you. So, yeah.
Open to being coached.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
My biggest thing as a coach, like I look for honesty and transparency with all my clients, like regardless of what their goals are or lifestyle or anything like that. You can't help them if they're not being honest, and you can only help them if you have as much information as possible. So yeah, honesty and transparency, like I find they're two key qualities that I look for in clients, particularly the coachable clients, so that you can get them to, where they want to get to.
Have you ever coached someone who wasn't coachable?
Yes. Yes. There have been a few. And like that was something that I learnt the hard way is that you cannot help everybody. And sometimes you're just not the coach for that particular client as well. And, for me personally, it was a big game changer when I could refer out. If you're not the fit for someone, there's no point forcing that. Like, you wouldn't try and force a relationship with someone or force a friendship. It's the same goes for like a coach-client relationship as well. And, I think the respect then comes onto the client, that if they can see you're trying to help them, refer them out as well. I just think that's really special. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of coaches need to understand is it's not necessarily you are the issue. It just could be that the relationship's just not there. So yeah, I think that's a big takeaway point that I've really learned the last couple of years.
It's a big one, especially around, with coaching, because at the end of the day, yes, we're here to change lives and help people, but we're also here to make a living and also enjoy what we're doing. So if we're not enjoying coaching certain people, it's just like you're gonna constantly, just like hit your head against the wall going, okay, well, I'm not enjoying this. I don't want to do this. Like, is this me? Is it them? Like, what's the problem? Aside from that takeaway, what other lessons did you get from that experience?
That particular experience, like honestly, just asking questions as a coach. Sometimes some clients just don't know how to communicate, and that's okay, and that's a skill that they can learn over time as well. But as a coach, you have to ask the right questions. You can't be blasé about it. And if you are needing like a direct answer or a direct response in terms of like whatever it is that the client's struggling with, you need to ask those questions. Like, yes, it's a 50-50 relationship, but, especially clients coming on board and they might not have ever been coached before. Like you have to be on top of them and you have to be keeping them accountable. Yes, but you also need to know what questions to ask them so that then again, you can either A, refer out or B, like change the structure in which you're coaching that particular client because not everyone learns the same, same in schooling, kids learn different ways. It's the same when you're coaching a client.
100%. I bloody hated school. I don't know about you.
Sorry?
I said I hated school.
Oh, yeah, I was very hands-on. Like I had to read something that is a no. So, even again, like with clients, some respond really well to like written feedback, some respond really well to like audios, some visual. So you just have to, you have to understand the client that you're working with.
And also being open-minded. I feel as if like when you start off in the industry or as a coach or even as a client, we have this particular way of wanting to do business. And if it's not that way, we're like frazzled by it. That's how I felt anyway when I first started, that if those clients could not adhere to what I was doing, then it's just like, okay, like, sayonara. But obviously coming into, my 10th year of coaching, you realize that there's changes between people. And like you said, if someone has better understanding of voice memos over text, then, being open to doing that as well.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
With the coaching side of things, I know we've just picked off about like, how do we find out who's a good fit for us or not, but I would love for you to share more about how do you encourage this way of living as a coach, but also embracing your own uniqueness as a athlete as well.
I think it comes down to like what is priority at like that specific time. And that's definitely something that I've had to learn more about, in the last, I'd say 6 to 12 months, particularly since I moved up to the coast. It's just understanding, when to push and when to pull back and like what is necessary and what's priority at a specific time. Because, like I'm sure you've had the same thing where, you give all of yourself to all your clients all the time, and then, you can't fill your cup up in any other aspect. And then, sometimes the table can completely turn and, you're focusing so much on one other aspect that, maybe clients aren't, having their needs met like quite so much. So for me, yeah, it's like understanding what's priority for that particular day, particular week, particular phase that I'm in. And also to like organization for anyone doing anything, organization is always going to be key. So like for me, like as an athlete in a dieting phase, I know that I have to structure my time a lot more carefully in terms of like, when am I most productive? When do I have my most brain fog? And things like that. So, really understanding what is priority for you and when. That's been the biggest takeaway, like learning to slow down too doesn't mean, you're not going to be successful or you're not making progress or you're not working towards where you want to get to. It's simply just, yeah, when do you slow down and like when do you push?
Speaking of like pushing and like pulling, what's an example of, life right now with you? Like where are you finding yourself pushing a little bit more but pulling back on the intensity?
I sort of feel at the moment I'm sort of recovering from an injury. So, training, although I love training all the time, we can and are in a position to pull back just a smidge at the moment. Training intensity and volume is a lot lower than what I would like it to be. So, we can pull back a little bit in terms of training, like in terms of like actual volume and the stress that it's like accruing on my body, but also to like the time spent in the gym is a lot less than, if I was dieting, doing cardio, doing big sessions. So because we can pull back on that, like my big focus at the moment is my clients and, not so much generating more clients, but I'm really big on educating the clients that I have. I like to say like I'm trying to coach myself out of a job because at the end of the day, like I don't want my clients to need me forever. And I think that should be where a lot of coaches are going. Even if it's a couple of two takeaway points that every client has that they can apply for the rest of their life, like I think that's really important. So that's where my focus is like really, really educating the clients that I have, regardless of like where they're at.
I love that because, that old saying, education is key, but once they have the education, are they able to implement that into their everyday life? And I think there's two different areas of looking at this because you could be consuming all the information, all the education, all the books, all the podcasts, but if you're not actually putting in the work and implementing it and making it into a habit, it's kind of a waste of the time.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that's one thing that like I try and make sure that I can see that the client can do it themselves, whether they know that that's the game that I'm playing or not. It is just nice to see because you don't want to let someone go if you know they're going to be coming back in, 6, 12, 18 weeks time. Because I feel like I'm doing a disservice to them as a coach if I don't actually think they could go out and apply it and implement it into their life.
Let's talk a little bit more about that because I feel as if sometimes as coaches, they don't have the confidence, or they're quite worried about saying the wrong thing to the client by making the client aware, hey, you're actually not at the stage yet to leave coaching. How about we work on X, Y, and Z? And it's a very gray area to bring up with people because, again, like I'm sure you felt this in the past. You're like, I really want to fucking help you. And I really don't think by the end of these 12 weeks, you're going to achieve all of this. Like, how about you start thinking about long term?
Yeah. I think like obviously building the relationship with the client from day one is essential. And I think by, say, for example, it's a 12-week program that they've signed up for, you'd expect that you'd accrued enough trust within that client that at the end of the 12 weeks, you say, hey, we aren't in a position, I'm not in a position to let you go, that they would have 100% faith in what you are saying,
Mm.
um, and would stay on. Yes, some people just aren't going to listen. And, that comes back to the whole coachable client thing too. You might not be the right fit. That's okay. But when a client would exit in a situation like that, I would still give them like a bit of a debrief on what they have learned in the 12 weeks, really making sure that, what, if anything, that they have learned, they can implement and apply it, whether they're ready to leave or not. But yeah, you really do hope that you've built that trust from the beginning, because like it's an overwhelming and it's a scary time for any client, regardless of their goal, to, put their faith in somebody else. And, like I'm so lucky, like I worked with Hattie for 3 years and like I've been working with James now for a year and a half. Both have my complete trust. And, you can just see the relationships that the coaches and the clients have, and then the clients succeeding as well. So yeah, trust is a big one. Trust is a huge one.
Trust and also honesty. And sometimes honesty and the truth can hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, again, depending on, yes, it is dependent on the report that you have with your coach or with your client. It's also taking personal responsibility on both ends.
100%.
And yeah, and that comes down to having an honest conversation with that person. And like you said, if they're willing to have that honest conversation and notice, the holes within whatever they're going through right now and accept it, then awesome. But then if they're still wanting to leave and do their own thing, again, like let them be.
Yeah, and if you can be honest with them and say, like, give them a reason and give them an example as to why you don't think they're ready to go out on their own, like they might not have even considered the points that you're thinking of. So, by having the conversation, maybe that just, makes them think about, oh, I'm not competent in, that particular category. Like, you're so right, I do need to stay on. Because, a lot of the time, a lot of people are focused on just the one thing, and whether that be like fat loss, muscle gain, whatever, like it is such a process. And I think people just get so caught up on social media and just setting really unrealistic expectations. But again, that comes back to the coach. Like when you're onboarding that client, be so brutally honest with them as what they can achieve in that time frame, because there's no point saying absolutely like we will lose 20 kilos in 6 weeks. That's realistic. And then getting to the end of that time frame and not doing so, one, the client feels super deflated that they didn't achieve it, and their trust is gone. Like you've broken their trust because you over delivered and over promised, and they're not happy with you. So of course they would be leaving.
Yeah, there's two different like ways of looking at it. And you made such good points around that, like the coachable side of things. Are they in it to do the work? And yeah, it's funny how you brought up the whole concept of them having this timeline of achieving a certain goal by a certain time, because like you said, like we all know, and hopefully our listeners know by now, that fat loss or muscle gain or whatever the goal is takes longer than expected. And again, maybe it is the social media, maybe it's just where we're at right now with life, that people think they can get the results immediately. It's like that gratification is just like, come on, guys, like let's take a fucking chill pill. It's probably going to take you like at least 3-5 years.
Yeah. And people need to consider too, like things like, just some people have freaky genetics. Like, they are blessed, good on them. But for the majority of people, like it doesn't work that way at all.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like over the years of studying mindset and being an eating psychology practitioner, you notice people's behaviors around goals, and the timeline is just so unrealistic. They're like, oh, I'll lose weight within 8 weeks, and then after that, life will be amazing. It's just like, yeah, but then you need to reverse out. And after reversing out, you need to maintain it. And what maintenance may look like you may look different to someone else. And
Yeah.
people don't take that into consideration.
At all. And, like you said about like a weight loss goal, like that's the biggest thing that I love seeing with clients or anyone in general is when they come into a space with a very specific weight loss goal with a very specific time frame. And after a few weeks, they're understanding that, if they are fueling their body correctly, if they're focusing on their sleep hygiene, sleep habits, moving their body, maybe getting a little bit more sun, you know, the whole shift, like it's a huge shift, and they're focusing more so on how they're feeling rather than the actual number. And I think that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing to see. It is my favorite thing to see, because people understand, yeah, it's more for longevity rather than a specific number. Because, it's the same as, when I have X job, I'll be happy, or when I earn X amount of money, I'll be happy. It's like, well, when you get to a certain weight, you're just going to be looking forward again. You need to, pause where you're at, be really appreciative and grateful, but also like reassess, like, all right, how can I progress from here? How can I progress from here, progress from here? Because it's not just when I lose 8 kilos, I'll be happy, the world will be so much better. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
It is not how it works.
And again, it's just so funny because it doesn't matter if it's like a money goal or weight loss goal or a dating goal or whatever goal that we have in mind, how people like reach it and they're like, cool, like it's done, ticked. But the thing is, like, once you've done one thing, it's going to take you to the next level of wanting to do another thing. And like, that's where you see the progress. Like, that's where you climb out. It's like the same with coaching. Once you start 1 year into coaching, then you're going to want to do, I don't know, another course or another certain skill development. It's just the ongoing process. And it's funny because I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and you don't realize how much you've achieved by actually sitting back and going, holy fuck, like I've done
Yeah.
so much. And again, like we don't give ourselves enough credit for it. However, we also acknowledged the fact that sometimes we'll hold ourselves back because we've achieved so much, but then we're like, oh fuck, I've done this. Does that mean I need to do like the next thing? Like
Yeah.
it's ongoing cycle.
It's-
And you know what? I truly believe that is why certain people don't want to continue it because they notice, well, if I start the gym right now, that means I'm going to have to go to the gym for the rest of my fucking life. That means I'm going to have to meal prep every week or every fortnight. That means I need to acknowledge my habits, my sleep routine, and like everything. And it's just like sometimes it can be so overwhelming for people.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to remember that like your priorities are allowed to change, and like you're allowed to evolve and, go down different paths. Like, health and fitness is a huge space.
Yeah.
It's not just you have to go to the gym 5 days a week, follow a meal plan, do this, this, and this, incorporate things that you freaking love. Like if you like going for walks, go for walks. If you don't worry about it. Like there's another form of movement that you'll enjoy. Yes, there are times for meal plans, there are times for flexible dietings, there's times for breaks off tracking completely, and I think as a coach too, like you need to be able to evolve with the times and the clientele that you're working with, because I find a lot of people that I speak to, like just because something worked 5 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work well now. And it's the same like for clients thinking about, all right, well, maybe the gym really served me 5 years ago, but that just doesn't suit my lifestyle right now. So how can I continuously be making progress, but in a way that's like a lot more achievable to me now? Like you're allowed to change. Like it doesn't have to be so rigid that that is exactly what you're doing for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and rigidity doesn't achieve the sustainability or like the balance that most people are wanting. And again, this is why we see so many people do fail within their goals because they do the all or nothing mentality. Like, cool, 8 week program, I'm going to lose the weight. And then after that, I'm just going to chill the fuck out. But then 2 years later, you put all the weight back on and you're like, shit,
Yeah.
I'm fat again. I need to do an 8 week challenge. And it like that's repetitive cycle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's hard, but I think once people understand like what works for them and like what works for me might not work for you and, vice versa. I think, yeah, once you find what works for you and you have to be willing to go through that trial and error period as well. Like some things suck and you will fail at some things, but that doesn't mean that, the next thing you try isn't going to be the most successful thing and the thing that like really just sets you off. So, I think a lot of people do give up, whether that be like really immediately or down the track. And that's again comes back to like the whole communication and honesty thing with a coach, with a friend, just someone that you trust and that you can sort of like bounce ideas off. Because I feel like once you verbalize something as well, it makes so much more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to have a conversation with someone, like if you're feeling stuck, why are you feeling stuck? What have you tried? What is not working? All right, well, if that's not working, how can we flip it? Yeah, conversations. It's one thing that's huge with my clients at the moment. I'm like, I don't care what it is. I promise you, if you voice it or like voice note it to me, you'll feel a million times better already. So
Yeah, that's one of my key elements of coaching is honesty.
mm-hmm.
Because again, like as you said, like if they don't communicate it, how are we supposed to know what's going
Yeah,
on?
I like to think I'm a mind reader, but I'm absolutely not. So
I don't think anyone is, even though like sometimes I'll have this intuitive feeling still.
yeah, yeah.
Speaking of balance, how do you navigate this balance, through work, lifestyle, training?
Again, like comes down to like what is priority and when. In a build phase, off season, whatever you want to call it, like there is a little bit more flexibility in terms of nutrition. And time. Like time is a big thing that I take for granted every single off season because you just forget like how much time like is you have to commit to like a competition prep or a dieting phase or something like that. But balance looks different to everybody. And something that I really try and drill into my clients is that, some people may be able to go out for dinner or go out and eat 5 meals a week and they can stay on track on their routine and, they don't deviate from the plan too much. Other people can't. They can go out for dinner twice a week, maybe. And again, it comes back to the knowledge and just the discipline that the clients have. But yeah, balance looks different to everyone. And honestly, to me, it looks different sometimes week to week. It's something that I've been really trying to focus on is, am I tired? Am I fatigued? And, in order to have the perfect balance for me, like what do I need right now? Sometimes that means, you can work yourself into the ground and, just hustle and hustle and hustle, but you have to be so self-aware as to when that's getting too much. And also for me, like in seeing other people and having conversations is always something that reminds me of like what I need in terms of, am I tired? Am I burnt out? Am I able to have a conversation with somebody? And if I'm not, I need to slow the hell down. So, it is just being self-aware. 100% it's being self-aware. And yeah, understanding that your balance will look different to somebody else's. And balance doesn't always just have to mean, 80-20. Like I know that that's what I try and encourage my clients for as well. But your balance could be 90-10. That could be all you need to sustain and maintain like where you're at. Some people know. So again, like trial and error, like find out what works best for you. Because what works for me like might not work for you at all.
100%. I completely agree with that. And I love the fact that you also mentioned that the balance is not necessarily 50-50. And this is where people get it wrong. They're like, oh, I need to do, 50% of my training nutrition, but 50% of hanging with my family and friends. I'm like, that may be the season that you're in right now. Like, for example, like health and fitness competitors on season, it's like mainly competition, like you're leading up to the comp, whether it's like 6 months out, 12 months, depending on what the prep is, you already have it scheduled in your mind of what needs to be done every day, every week, every month, whatever like that plan is for season on, and knowing that you're going to probably do less socializing, less eating out, more training, more meal prep, whatever it is, where your off season is going to be completely different, where you'll have more of that flexibility, which, as you said, will probably be 70-30 for instance, where comp takes probably majority of the time.
Your time. Yeah. And it was something that I really tried to, make my clients aware of too over like the Christmas, New Year's period. A lot of the time that's the only time they'll see their friends and family or have, back-to-back social events or things like that. I'm like, if you guys, you need to look at the whole year. It's not just necessarily a week and you need to find the balance for that week. Like, look at the year. You might have pushed really hard for October, November, didn't really see a lot of your friends, barely saw your family. So if you have 3 consistent weeks where you're seeing friends and family and being a little bit more social, like over the course of the year, your balance is perfect.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. And speaking of balance, like we've mentioned how like we would encourage our clients to do that. What would you say is the most important part of recognizing balance in their life or like in your own unique way?
I think it's understanding again, like, what does the client want? Like, what are their goals? What are their lifestyle? What's their lifestyle like? Jobs, family, any sort of other commitments. And then understanding, what do you need? And, what is then asking too much? And then when aren't you giving enough? So, again, it comes down to the client being really self-aware, really self-aware. And then again, comes back onto the coach to ask the right questions. Again, it's going to be client specific and dependent on the client and their circumstances, but, teaching them to be self-aware so that, again, like when they leave, they can self-regulate, they can understand their balance, they can understand what they need more. Because it's never a one-size-fits-all approach. Nothing in this world is a one-size-fits-all approach in this industry. And yeah, it's really important to understand that, one person, their hustle, they might be able to work 9, 10, 11-hour days with no breaks, go to the gym, still meal prep. That's not realistic for you. That is not realistic for you.
Speaking of the customized side of things,
Yeah.
and we laugh about this because we know the downfall of people just copying one another's plans. And, I've fallen for it many, many times back when I started my health and fitness journey. But like, in your opinion, how does a personalized and more of a flexible approach to someone's health and fitness contributes more of a long-term success for them?
I think a big part of it too comes back to, again, if the client can see that it's a personalized approach and a personalized program, they immediately have more trust in you and that you have their best interests at heart. So immediately, like by establishing that, they're going to listen to what you have to say a hell of a lot more, which means they're going to take on a lot more information. They're going to learn so much more from you. But like having a personalized approach too, you have to think about, again, like lifestyle factors. What does the client want? And do they have any injuries? Like that's a big one that I see is clients coming on board who have just had a cookie cutter approach and that's only made their injury and something like that so much worse. And then that particular client loses trust in the health and fitness space completely. So it's rebuilding that. But if a client can see that it's personalized, then they're just going to feel so much more appreciated as well. And I think that's something that gets so overlooked is that like you should love your clients. You should have respect for every single one of them and you should want to see them all succeed. It's not, for me, it's never been like a money grabbing thing. Like I love this space so much. But yeah, if it's personalized, the client cares. And then I think too, they can see it's personalized, their adherence and their compliance is so much greater than if they just think you've just copied and pasted a document from ChatGPT or something like that. Which in turn, they're going to achieve their results.
I actually haven't played around ChatGPT yet, but someone told me that it spits out like a generic program. It's on my to-do list to actually notice like what it spits out to what I actually and how I program to my clients. Have you done it?
I've tried to have a play. I'm not tech savvy in the slightest, so it was not my vibe. But like you can sort of read it from a mile away. And I think a big thing too, as a client, ask your coach questions. If you're not sure of something or, you are just wondering why a certain exercise has been programmed or, X, Y, and Z, ask the coach. And if they cannot give you an answer, maybe that's a red flag.
Yeah, 100%. Isn't that interesting? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there just getting away with
Yeah.
giving generic programs. Yeah. Oh, I guess like, you know what, like that could be a conversation for another time, or maybe not a conversation online at all.
Offline conversation.
Yeah, maybe another time to have a tea over it or some coconut water.
Not water.
Oh my God, too funny. Okay, so balance, personalized programming. We've spoken about how we can figure how to be a better coach, but also, you know, having a better understanding of approaching coachable clients. How do you encourage your clients or individuals to embrace more of their uniqueness when it comes to their personal goals or even like their professional goals when they're wanting to maintain their health?
I usually try, a lot of clients will come to me with very generic goals and answers to any sort of question. So my biggest thing is just one, really establishing that relationship from the get-go, but like getting to know the client on a little bit more of a personal level as well. Like understand, what do they enjoy doing, like in school, like what sports did they love doing? You know, were they a physical kid? Were they an active kid? You know, what did they study? You know, have they played sports outside? What's their family like relationships and dynamic like? Because you can learn a lot from someone as to why they're setting specific goals. And I find a lot of clients come on board setting weight loss goals. They're not doing it for them. They're doing it because they feel like they have to fit in, or they feel like they have to conform to, you know, a certain stereotype or body type because they're a Gold Coast girl or something like that, you know. So understanding your client on a deeper level is so important. And then the more conversations that you can engage them in, you know, you can start like picking the pieces apart a little bit. It's like, oh, well, you know, originally you came to me wanting to lose 5 kilos, but you told me you're really freaking competitive. You used to love playing sports in school. You know, you loved showing the boys up when it came to like X, Y, and Z. Why don't we shift this to more performance-based goal? And then you just see them absolutely thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So ask the questions. Like, please, coaches, ask them questions. Because, you know, you can just sort of peel the layers back. And to be completely honest, like when I first went to Hattie, I just wanted to compete because it looked cool, you know, and sort of to get external validation. Now that's not my idea of competing at all. Like I love it because I love the process and I love the challenge. And it was because Hattie sat down and asked me questions. I was like, oh, like that actually doesn't align with what I feel and what I want to do right now. So, you know, you have the conversations and really just get to know your clients.
It's so interesting how when you were talking, I was kind of like giggling inside when certain people think they're wanting to achieve certain goals, but then they look at other people or, like you said, a Gold Coast person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, I'm not in Gold Coast, but the fitness world is a small fucking world. Like we know
Yeah.
everyone knows everyone. And it's funny because like whenever I've been there and it's, you know, it's been a while, there's this certain look.
Yeah.
And again, like, I don't know if it's just the fitness side of things. Like you see quite a fair bit of it in Melbourne, but I think it's more exposed over there.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. And that's what too, like I find obviously I'm gaining a lot more clients from like the Queensland area as well. And just when they come on board, like the conversations that we have versus my clients that I had back in Tassie, I think like they're chalk and cheese. They're so different because people are living very different lifestyles and they, like you said, they're exposed to two very different dynamics of people, which is interesting. And it's something that I've actually, you know, like I've been very aware of when speaking to new clients coming on board because where they live does play a huge factor as well. You know, whether that's can they go and do steps outside because it's nice weather, or in Tassie, is it shit weather and you don't want to go outside? So again, like that's why like a cookie cutter approach is never going to work for everybody because even just things like environmental factors play a huge part in what you can actually get the client to do and for them to enjoy it and not feel like a friggin' chore.
Definitely. And speaking of goals, you also mentioned how like certain times people would say they want to achieve a goal. As an example for yourself, like you wanted to do the bodybuilding, but it came from a negative aspect of living where now it's like the mindset is completely different. And when speaking with clients, majority of the time they'll want to achieve a certain goal. But when you come down to it, most of the time it's not even their goal. They've just seen someone do it and they're like, oh, that's fucking cool. I want to do it. And you know what? There's always really it comes from a nice place because they're being inspired by other people by doing certain things. You also want to have a better understanding of going, cool, like, why do I want to compete? Why do I want to run a marathon? Why do I want to do anything?
And that was something that I learned from Nikki Casa actually, is like continuously ask why. You know, like a client comes to you, you ask them why. They might be able to give you a response to that first why. You ask them again a second time, they're like, oh shit, like I actually don't know. And Nikki was saying if you can get them to answer 5 whys, yeah, that's solid. Like that is their goal. But, like that's where you really need to dig deep as well and understand that, or asking the whys, you can usually peel back and understand their reason for that. And then you can completely change their way of thinking.
I fucking agree with that so much. I actually challenged one of my friends not long ago. I think it was a couple of weeks. We were chatting while we were training, and he was saying that he was wanting to pursue a certain business opportunity. And I'm like, why? And he was just like giving me his answer. And he's like, cool. And why is that important to you? And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, cool, but why? And he just like looks at me. He's like, what's with the questions? I'm like, because I'm genuinely interested to know if this is something you're actually wanting to do, or is
Yeah.
this just something that you've, fucking seen on Instagram and you're like, this would be cool.
Yeah. And that's like, I think people need to understand too, like what you see on social media. And I know, like, I'm sure you've spoken about it a lot. It's not real.
Mm.
People, it is just a highlight reel for everybody. And, like I encourage all my clients to, some weeks we have screen time shares where I need to see that everyone's screen time is being reduced, or like what app is having the most use for them. And we try and reduce it because I find their mental health and like just their space that they're in is so much better and more productive when their screen time is down, or when their time scrolling Instagram is down, or TikTok is down. And, like it's quite a funny game, and like all the girls love it now. But yeah, it was a big, big eye opener.
Isn't that interesting? We use this phone to network and socialize through an app, yet when we're on the actual app, it makes us feel like shit. And you know what? I can be honest right here, and I'm sure you can agree with me as well. There's times where I would look at it and be like, oh, I should be doing this. I need to do this. Oh, I shouldn't rest. And it's just like that constant, like, pressure. And it's just like, fuck, like, let's switch off for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, lesson learned, guys. If you're finding yourself scrolling and you're finding yourself in a doom scroll and you're absolutely anxious, depressed, and upset, maybe it's the app and it's not you.
Yeah, get off it.
Seriously. Oh, it's crazy. Okay, obviously you're competing. When's the competition?
We're looking at season A, so early next year.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a full year off. So I did an ICN show back in, goodness, 2018, 2 years of COVID cancelled shows, and then competed in 2022. So yeah, this year will be a full off season, which I'm really excited for. And now that I've accepted the fact that I'm not competing this year, to be honest, I don't mind if it's pushed towards later next year. Having conversations with James and like some of his other clients, why did I want to compete? And I could only answer it once, and that's because I'm competitive. My whys after that were getting very, very thin. So, I love building. Like I love feeling strong in the gym. Like that's my jam. And it's a process. And I think you can tell a lot about an athlete when they can commit to the off season. And, yeah, there's structure, but yes, there's a lot of flexibility as well. But yeah, we've got a solid year to build, which is needed.
A solid year to have so much fun. I bet James is just frothing over the idea of programming this off season for you.
Yeah, once we're recovered from injury, because I'm being very, very managed at the moment. which is not a vibe for me. I won't lie. But yeah, once we can train like at 100%, yeah, I'm gonna be stoked.
Yes, yes to training and yes to being injury free. You know what? James is, I wouldn't say probably, James is the man for those who need to recover from injuries.
And like I honestly couldn't. He was so good, in terms of like yes, physical progression, but also too like my mentality. Like I have not been injured before, not like that. And the first couple of months, like it hit me. Like I got quite flat about it. And, just having the coach and having the support from somebody, like it meant the world because people not in this space or that haven't been injured before, they don't
They
understand.
don't
Like,
know.
why are you sad? Like,
Yeah.
it's a sore hamstring. Get over it. It's like, well, no, I can't train. We looked at different outlets too to deal with like stress or anxiety because I found I did put all of that in the
Into
gym. And then
training.
once that's taken away, it's like, well, now I've got to sit with my demons. That's not great. So, yeah, I was working through that. And I actually learned a lot through being injured, like patience, yes,
Mm.
but, just how to navigate and just how to deal with things differently as well. And it's been a blessing. You'd asked me a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have said that. But yeah, I've learned a lot and grateful to have been injured, I
In a
guess.
weird way.
Right? Like, wouldn't have wished it upon anybody and don't want it to happen again. But yeah, like it's been a very, very, very valuable lesson.
Yeah, I learned a lot when I was injured. And funnily enough, James actually coached me while I was injured as well. And I can relate to the fact of him being so supportive and being patient about the fact of my annoying messages and calls. Sorry, James, if you're listening to this. But it takes a particular person to be able to hold a really safe space, but also making someone so comfortable in knowing the pain that they're going through. And you know what? He's done his fair share of fucking injuries. So he knows, like you said, some people who haven't had injuries cannot relate to it. It's like you going through a breakup, but your friends don't know the feeling that you're going through. Of course, they're not going to resonate. But if you speak to fucking Susie next door who just went through a breakup, you're going to be able to have that conversation and be like, yeah, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something again, like I'm really grateful for just for the coaches that I've had in the past. Hattie and James have just they've set the bar so high. I don't know if I could be coached by anyone else. So
You know what? It's such a good way of looking at coaching.
yeah,
To be honest, like from last year, mid last year, I just started setting such high bars, not only for myself,
yeah,
but with people that I'm involved with, my friends, family, work, lifestyle. It's a very interesting way of looking at life, but you get so much better. And again, the factor of setting high standards for yourself weeds out the fucking, little toxic people out.
100%. And that's something that I've learned the hard way, particularly the last 12 months, is that, some people are only in your life for, a short period of time that you thought were going to be in there forever. And that is completely okay. And it's okay to grieve them and, like be sad, like let yourself feel that, but understand that they did not serve a purpose for where you're going,
Mm.
regardless whether that's, in terms of like me as an athlete, me as a person, whatever. It's just, yeah, it's really important just to go with the flow. Like don't force relationships with anybody. Um, and being up here has been really nice because again, like, the fitness industry can be really freaking overwhelming. But if you're networking with the right people that want
100%.
to push you to be better and that call you out on your shit, they're
Yes.
the like they're the ones that you want around.
Yeah. Call out on your shit, but in a really like loving, friendly way.
I love boss.
Yeah. I love you, but you're being really annoying right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I literally just put up a story saying that one of my goals for 2024 is to do more in-person networking events or being part of, certain networking. Because again, it's not just in the health and fitness industry, it's just being as an adult. We don't go out that much anymore. And to be honest, like I don't drink. I don't know about you. So it's just like, I'm not going to go to the bar and meet people. So it's just like, how do we network? And, you know, there's so much, it's a really cool way of like doing this to be able to network, you know, outside of podcasting and meeting people in person or, you know, voice memos, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like for me, my biggest thing is like networking with people like in the same industry, in the same space, but they might have different niches as well, which
Mm.
I love, you know, sort of understanding. It doesn't mean that you're going to go and take their ideas or take their clients, but nice just to engage in conversations that aren't about other people, like they're about ideas and like growth and progression and moving forward. And like you should be leaving conversations feeling so much better than what you did when you got there. So, you know, inspired and motivated and driven, and like they're the people that you want to be networking with.
Yeah, definitely. And you made such a good point. It's like for those who are in the health and fitness industry or whatever, like pursuing anything, it's like being mindful of the people that you're around. Like, are you leaving those conversations feeling inspired, energized, it was fun, or are you leaving those conversations feeling depleted,
Yeah.
negative? Because it wasn't until I think 2021 or 2022 I realized how certain people were making me feel, and I was just like, can't do this. This is not healthy whatsoever.
Yeah. That's been, and you know, having friends that have been able to call me out on my shit, or when I'm being maybe too much of a people pleaser or something like that. They're like, what is that person doing in your life? Like, how do they serve you? Again, I can't answer why. Gone. Out
Yeah.
of here.
Well, 2024 is for all the things, enjoying the build phase, you know, no longer being a people pleaser and, you know, finding that balance. I fucking love this for us.
Yeah, I love this for us.
So good. Georgie, thank you so much for joining me in today. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, how can they find you?
Instagram is the easiest way to contact me. So I'm just G Levett, GeeLevett. And yeah, come along for the ride.
Come along for the fucking ride, girls. Buckle up and let's bring on 2024.